this was fucked up. So there was a book released, Disney High. It was written by a journalist, Ashley Spencer. And it's the untold story of the rise and fall of Disney Channel's tween empire. And there were a lot of stories that were included in this book, like, little tidbits like Jesse McCartney turning down High School Musical, or Zac Efron crying when his pilot didn't get picked up, little stories like that. But one of the more fucked up ones was that it was revealed that Disney used CGI to make Raven-Symoné appear slimmer in an episode of That's So Raven. And the episode in question was titled That's So Not Raven, and it aired during the second season of the show. And it focused on Raven's character struggling with her body image after being rejected from a modeling gig for being perceived as too big. So while the episode was conveying a message of self-acceptance, production on Disney's side was actually doing quite the opposite and CGIing Raven-Symoné's body to appear slimmer. So it's so fucked up and backwards that the message of this episode was to empower young girls watching the show to be like, feel good about themselves. But on the other side of it, while they're trying to put this message out there, they're actually making Raven-Symoné feel bad about herself, the star of the show, by CGIing her to make her look smaller.
Yep. It is really crazy. They quoted a producer and writer for the series, and Disney Channel was going crazy about it, talking about Raven's weight fluctuating. She said they handled it in really bad ways, but it was never to her face. And then producer Michael Feldman said it was shameful of the alleged alterations. I don't know how they could look at themselves and do that. The very thing that she wanted to do a story about was literally done to her. It's still a shocking thing to me that they were that tone deaf.
And they also did it during the episode in which she was trying to convey this message. It's so backwards. It's so sick. So twisted to do to a young woman who was an absolute star. Like, Raven-Symoné was somebody who, when I watched on my TV screen, was somebody I wanted to be. Like, I wanted to capture her self-confidence, her fashion, her sense of style, her comedic timing. Like, everything Raven-Symoné had on That's So Raven was so like, as a young girl, that's what you watched and you wanted to be her. Like, she was so funny, witty, smart, and so fashionable. And it's like, that's what I got from this show. But behind the scenes, knowing that they were like doing these things to Raven and having these conversations about Raven, but not to her, is just so fucked up.
It really is
so fucked up.
Absolutely. It's that time, like, God, it was just the hyper fixation on especially young girls' bodies is crazy.
It's insane. And especially if you now go back to stories about, like, it's so fucked up to even bring up, but like Jessica Simpson, right? There were so many tabloid stories about Jessica Simpson's weight that when you go back and look at these pictures of Jessica Simpson, who looked fucking dynamite, you're like, what were they feeding our brains as young girls growing up, reading these tabloids? Magazines our moms were reading. And then you're picking up the magazine in a nail salon when you're a young girl, reading these magazines, and they're plastering all over the place. Jessica Simpson gained this much weight. Britney Spears gained this much weight. And then now, going back and looking up these photos that they were plastering everywhere, and these ladies look dynamite. Like, they look so gorgeous. And you're like, these were the images we were made to look at and think that they didn't look good. Like, it's so twisted. So many episodes of TV shows, I think back, like Full House, when they had the episode of DJ feeling like she was gaining weight and she was taking those caffeine pills, and you look back and you're like, she looked great. And like they were making it seem like we were supposed to look at that and think that she looked a certain way, or Degrassi, or any of those shows where it's like, it's so sick. You're like, oh my God, what we grew up with watching and seeing and like was trying to be put into our brains, and then having to undo that as you grow up. It's so crazy, especially the ones that were living it and having those things said about them. Like, you know, as young girls watching it, you know, you have to kind of unlearn the things that you saw, but then also being the example. Like being these celebrities, these women that were put into the spotlight had those things said about them. Like I can't even imagine.